Welcome to Hoops Headspace, the podcast where mental health and sports intersect. I'm your host, Jada Rich.
I'm your co-host, Tae.
For sure. So today we have Coach John Redman. He's the head men's basketball coach at Northwest Mississippi Community College. And we're going to talk with him about what college coaches really look for physically, mentally, and emotionally in athletes. Yeah. So we just want you to start us off and share a bit of your coaching background, etc., and what brought you to Northwest.
Yeah, so, I started obviously, I wanna play in college. I went to school, Spring Hill College. I wasn't a great player and basically became the manager and did that for, a couple of years, and all of a sudden, I kinda fall into a job at Spring Hill school I went to. I worked there for 3 years, and we actually got fired, and then I get a job in Georgia at Dalton State, and it was the NAIA school, and, I was there with a guy named Tony Ingle, who was the head coach at BYU a long time ago. And we had a ton of success. We actually won a national championship in 2015 and went to the Elite Eight next year. I left there. I was 26 years old, and I thought I wanted to be a head coach. I thought I needed to be a head coach, just so fast. So I took a high school head coaching job back in Mobile, my hometown, and I realized quickly I didn't know what I didn't know. And I realized when you move 6 inches over, a lot changes for you. Not just, mentally, just a lot changes. You deal with a bunch of problems. I think when you're an assistant coach, you have problems you deal with, but when you're the head coach, you have all those problems you had as assistant coach and more. And so I got an opportunity to go work at the University of Mobile for one of my mentors, and I was there for 1 year. And then I got a call from Delta State 7 years ago, and I was there for 7 years. Had a great experience in Cleveland. Loved Delta State. And I actually got to work for two guys. I worked for a guy named Jim Boone, who has over 500 wins. He's a Hall of Famer. And then last, I worked for a guy named Mike Nienaber, who's like eighth all-time NCAA Division II wins. He's got over like 630 wins. So I was with him for 6 years. Man, my time at Delta State was unbelievable. I really felt like I was going to basketball school. And I thought my basketball just got so much better at Delta State. And, man, it changed my life. And I'm so thankful, I was there and so thankful as a young coach, people entrusted me and, empowered me to learn and grow and fail. I think a lot of times, a lot of people talk about failure. That's part of growth. If you're not failing, you're not growing, and too many times, kids, they put their head down, they get upset. Well, I messed up. Messing up is part of it. If you're not messing up, you're probably not going hard enough. You're probably not, trying hard enough. And so I was very fortunate, to be around some guys that, really empowered me and really helped me and really allowed me to, to grow and, mature and become the person I am today and the coach I am today.
Man, that sounds like a great journey, and you really hit home with me personally when you said you felt like you just had to get into head coaching, and like you said, you don't know what you don't know
Yeah.
until you get there. And how was your coaching philosophy developed through your time at Delta State?
It's I think my philosophy, it's kind of funny. It's actually totally different than anybody I ever worked for. And I think I think I took pieces of everybody I worked for and every program I've been around and try to mold it into, kind of who I am as a person and what's important to me. And I think that's in coaching, that's what the best coaches do. They see things they like or don't like and try to figure out, how to play it all together, how to mold it all together. And so that's kind of, how my philosophy came, for me. But, for me, I want kids to play hard. I want effort. I want kids to buy in. And, I want kids to care. And, I want kids to, love playing. And, I think too many times you see, like I said, you see people put their head down, upset. I'm like, guys, we're playing basketball. What are you upset for? We're not digging ditches. We're not working the road. We are playing basketball. And I think too many times guys just get too upside down. Like they're on a roller coaster ride. Guys, listen, just play hard, man. Be grateful. I tell our guys all the time, man, smile. I want to see you smiling more. And sometimes, I feel like I'm Ted Lasso. I'm just trying to get guys to believe.
Yeah.
That show, it's crazy, man. it's coaching and it's life. Um, so at the end of the day, man, I think it's, with coaching anybody, I don't care what sport you do, what sport you coach, you're dealing with people. And at the end of the day, it starts with people. So I think, the more you can coach people and get people and get their heart, the closer you can get their heart, man, I think the better opportunity you have to, to mold them and grow them and coach them.
I love that. Isms. Yeah. Isms. So first, coach, we're going to talk about what you look for physically in players. So when you're evaluating a player physically, what specific traits do you focus on?
Well, it's kind of funny. I think anybody, I don't care who you are, you can walk into a gym, say, "Hey, that kid can play. That kid's, he's the tallest one. That kid's the fastest one," and that's easy. I think anybody can look at the stat sheet and say, "Man, this kid's a great player." I think all the back work, the back work that goes into that. How is he off the court? How is he, with his teammates? How is he, in practice? How is he in the classroom? How is he, with his parents? That's the stuff that takes work. So when I go see kids, pretty much I know the kid can play or not. So when I spend like I'm not wasting a bunch of time saying like this kid can play, this kid can't play. Like if I'm going to see a kid play, he probably can play because I got other people say this kid's great, he is what he is, and so and I think really important. You know, I think every coach knows at the end of the day what they're looking for, and everybody's looking for something different. And like for me, I want kids, to really play really really hard, and I want kids, just to buy in, and I want kids to, just maximum effort. So that's what I'm looking for. Now it might not be the same for what another school's looking for. Everybody's different. But like I said, so when I go to games, I pretty much know, hey, this kid can, he can play, but now does he fit what I'm looking for, off the court, in practice, in the classroom, in the locker room. And I think that doesn't get talked about enough. It's just more than just playing. A lot of kids can play basketball. A lot of kids can play a lot of sports, but a lot of kids can do the other stuff too. And the other stuff, that's what sets you apart.
Yeah, because that was my next question. I wanted you to like emphasize why you feel like the effort is more beneficial to their growth potential compared to those physical tools.
Well, I think everything starts with effort and attitude. If you don't believe you can do it, you probably can't do it. And then if you don't try, give the effort, you ain't gonna do it. So to me, this is those two things, man. Effort, we talk about all the time, effort and attitude. And I think both go hand in hand. Like I said, obviously, there's kids can play everywhere in the world. I mean, international kids, kids everywhere. But are they gonna believe they can play? A lot of kids say, I spent a lot of time practicing, man, guys, I can't believe more than you believe. You gotta believe in yourself. I catch myself, on the bench during games yelling, shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. And I'm telling guys, I can't believe, you're better than what you are. I believe in you. So I think just trying to get guys to believe in themselves is a huge part of coaching.
Yeah, and I like that you encourage that, because there are a lot of coaches that do the opposite, Um, and then moving forward, just as far as those mental qualities, what mental qualities do you look for in your players?
I want guys that are really coachable. Like I said, I tell my kids all the time, I'm gonna coach you really hard in practice. But in games, I want to watch you play. In practice, that's my time to coach. That's my time to yell. It's my time to scream. It's my time to get upset. But in games, I want you to play. I want to manage you and watch you, but I want to watch you play. And so I want guys that one listen, one that that you can have a conversation with and communicate. So I think too many times you get on a kid and they start getting like what this or that. No, just listen. And then when you have someone say we can talk about it, but this is what I thought. Okay, what do you think? And, I think too many times, kids want to have a discussion. No, it's not up for discussion. This is what we're going to do. And if you don't like that, then you probably need to go somewhere else. Or it ain't going to work out. So I think for us, I want guys that are really coachable. Mentally guys, I want guys that don't quit. And like I said, and that word belief, I want guys that believe in themselves and believe in the power of others. Because, I think if you believe in the power of others, man, great things can happen. One of the things, it's funny, one question that I talk about all the time. I want guys to serve each other. I think, a
Mm.
big word in our program is service. And I don't think that word don't get talked about enough in sports. Man, it's about serving others. And the more you can serve each other, the better everybody's going to be. I'm coaching junior college. Well, in junior college, everybody's trying to get, next level, next step, next step. But if you don't serve each other, nobody's going anywhere. That's so we all gotta serve each other. It's a service-based industry. It's a service-based sport. So I'm huge on that. I talk about serve each other all the time.
Most definitely. Because just like you said, a lot of them are hungry for their opportunity and lose focus on that.
No doubt.
Yeah. But as far as your program, how do you cultivate mental toughness and consistency?
Man, we practice really hard, and we kind of have a no. We just don't take no excuse. There's no excuses. This is what we're gonna do. If you don't like it, sorry, but this is how we're gonna do it. And that don't mean we're not up to change. At the end of the day, I'm just trying to do the best thing for our program, best thing for you as a player, best thing for our team. And so like we meet one on one with players all the time. I probably meet with every player every bi-weekly, our whole roster. And I take notes. Hey, how can I help you? How can be a better player? How can I help you on the classroom? How can I help you in the whatever in your family? And I think when you have those kind of relationships with people, you can really help them. You can really coach them.
Yeah. I like that.
I like
Yeah,
everything. Getting a lot of isms today, so
I
yeah.
think if you don't have a personal relationship with people, you can't really coach kids.
I agree.
So I'm
I
really
agree.
really big on. I coach my guys really hard, but they know I start my dogs.
Yeah, so there they go.
They know I love and care about them. But
Yeah,
that takes time. That takes time to build that.
it does. It does. And it's real beneficial when you do though.
No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah. Have you seen a difference as far as players that enter college already with those good mental habits compared to ones that don't?
For sure, for sure. I think a lot of times, you get kids, really good programs. They have really good mom and dad at home, or really whoever at home with them. It's a huge thing. I think you get kids that might have failed a little bit and overcame things. Sometimes everybody wants a kid to win a state championship. That's easy, but what if that kid had to overcome? And the word overcome, and in life, you're going to have to overcome something. And if you ever not overcame anything, where are you at? What are you doing? Because that's life. Life adversity hits. What are you going to do? Are you going to point fingers, or are you going to try to dig deeper and work a little harder?
Yeah, yeah. And you know, just speaking on that too, with them trying to make it to the next level, they kind of start off behind when you come in lacking that already.
No doubt.
You
No doubt.
know, especially with older players now being involved, that are more mature mentally.
Yeah, one thing I do really like about junior college level, and I say I've never coached junior college until this year. I've always been a 4-year coach. But one thing I really do like, and I have to remind myself, occasionally, and my wife does a great job. I'm dealing with 18-year-old kids. I'm dealing with kids that just were in high school last year. In the last couple of years at Delta State, I was dealing with 22 or 23 or 24-year-old kids. Well, now, and kids have been in college 6 years. Now I'm dealing with kids that just left their mom and daddy 2 months ago. And so that's a huge, huge thing. But I think at the end of the day, if you get kids really buy in and really believe, they're it doesn't matter how old they are. They just want someone to believe in themselves. Believe in them. And we spend a lot of time just in trying to build our guys, man. We believe in you. We believe in you. We believe in you. And just try to build guys up.
Yeah. And then emotionally, how important is it for them to have emotional resilience? Because you were talking about you need to have dealt with something in life before you get here, you know?
Know that adversity hits everybody in their lives at different points. And I said, if you ever meet somebody, that hasn't dealt with adversity, just wait, because it's gonna happen. So adversity hits everybody, and one person's problems, is another person's success. So everybody you can't treat the same. I think, when you have teams, everybody's like, "Why treat everybody the same?" Well, you really can't do that, because everybody comes from different backgrounds, different families, different upbringings. So everybody is at a different point stage in their life. And, for us, having guys mentally ready, mentally prepared, we try to test them early, just, obviously physically, test them early mentally, and then really see, what's sticking and how we can, help them grow as a person.
Yeah. Okay. And
And
then what are some examples of some emotional traits that help athletes succeed in college environments?
Yeah, I think a big one, for us is, man, I want kids that love it. I want kids that love it. And if you don't love it in college sports, you ain't gonna last very long because it is a full time job. That's people can say what they want. I mean, college athletics is a full time job. You get up in the morning, you might have breakfast, meeting, whatever you have. You might have study hall, you have classes, you might have weights, you might have individual workouts. You got practice, you got more study hall. You have grade checks, you have bed checks. So I mean, you're at work, and so if you don't love it, if you're not fully invested, you ain't gonna like it. You ain't gonna make it. And I really believe I want guys that love it. And love is not all kissy kissy, huggy huggy. Love is, like, you're invested. You're bought in. And I think when you see a team that's really fully bought in, fully invested, man, you can just see it and you can feel it. And that's we're not there yet, but that's what we're trying to get. We're trying to get all of our guys, man, really bought in, really invested. Because once they're all invested together, and you get guys kind of tied in together, man, it's hard to break them bonds.
Yeah.
yeah,
And then when it comes to like your recruiting process and tryouts, like as far as assessing their attitude, their teamwork, leadership quality, stuff like that, how do you go about that? And what are you kind of looking for?
Yeah, um, recruiting, that's an everyday job. And I heard this a long time ago. If recruiting is like taking a shower. If you don't recruit every day, you stink. It's recruiting.
mm,
It's a 24 hours, 7 days a week job, and you're always working. My phone's ringing and texting right now. I got 3 or 4 things, on recruiting stuff. And but recruiting, there's a lot of great players out there. But I really think where a lot of coaches mess up and players mess up. They go places where they don't fit. I think that's one reason you see all these kids transferring. And, there's all these kids that want to play, but you have to get kids that fit you, fit what you want to do, fit your program, and vice versa. Kids need to go where they fit. Everybody ain't gonna fit me. Everybody don't fit how we play. That is not knock. That's the truth. A lot of kids can't. They won't fit into my coaching style. That is what it is. So I know that. So I know what I'm looking for. So I'm looking. I try to do a lot of work in the front end, make sure kids fit me, make sure kids fit our program. And then if they decide it fits them, that's, when you have a really good marriage. But I just think, I think so much time in recruiting, that word fit is not used enough, and I think in the front end, if kids go where they fit in really well, and it will change a lot.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then when it comes to you developing the whole player, how do you blend in the physical training with the mental training and the emotional development like all together within your program?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like I said, I'm a huge meeting, a huge one-on-one guy. I have guys. I take guys to lunch. Just me and him. And like I said, I believe you spend much time as you can off the court with your guys on top of the practice. So yeah, we have practice for 2 hours a day, whatever it is. But my day with my players is 24 hours a day. I text them, call them, just checking in on them. Hey, how's this going? How's this going? So I think the more you can do that, that's how you build trust. And I think when you get guys trust you, that's when you really get the heart. And once you get the heart, you can really help guys. You really mold guys. And one thing too, physically, and I think it kind of goes to all that stuff. Mentally, emotionally, physically. I think when you spend time one on one, I heard you a long time ago. I can't remember where I heard it from a coach, but if you want to get to know a kid, go rebound for him. So I mean, I as a head coach still, I mean, I get in with guys and just rebound them, pass to them all the time. Because guys, I mean, once they know you can get them better, they start listening a little more. And once they know how much you care about them, they start opening up a little more. And so that's for us. I think you can't change a kid. You can't mold a kid until they know that you're really about helping them. So we spend a lot of time making sure our guys know how much we care about them and how much we want to see them do well in the future.
And what role does leadership and character play in team culture for you?
Huge, it's everything. And anybody says it's not, they're lying to you. You know, That's character. I've heard a lot of guys say, they recruit the ABCs, academics, basketball, character, whatever you want to say about recruiting. But I believe, you build culture with who you bring in your program. So to me, you recruit culture. You want culture, you recruit it. If you want a bunch of, guys that can really shoot it, you recruit that. So why wouldn't you do the same to their culture? If you want leaders, recruit leaders. If you want guys that, are about a team, recruit that. And that's the great thing about college. You can build your team kind of however you want. I think what you see about in college athletics, everybody does it their own way. But I really believe, man, you want culture, you recruit culture, you bring culture in.
Most definitely. I love that answer.
Some of the qualities that you look for in your players, do you look for that in your coaches, your assistant coaches too?
No doubt, no doubt. And my coach would tell you sometimes they probably think I'm getting on them, but I try to coach them just like I'm coaching the players. I wasn't good at much, but I felt like I was a really good assistant and just got to work really hard at. So and a lot of guys invested in me, time, money, resources, whatever it is. So I want to make sure I'm investing that in my coaches too. And so I hold them the same standard as the players, and I spend the same amount of time trying to build that one-on-one. We'll go to lunch, we'll talk, whatever it is. I want to make sure that they know how much I care about them before I start coaching them. Before I start getting on them, because I really believe if guys know how much you care, they just open up, they just listen more.
Yeah, that's a good question, Coach.
Hmm.
And then off the floor, not just emotionally, how do you help them with life skills and academics, confidence, etc.?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that one thing. I believe you want kids with good grades, you recruit that. And I do believe though, you are who you're around. So, you have a bunch of kids, have good grades, do well in school, and you maybe bring one kid that's kind of on the border. Well, his grades are gonna go up because he's around a bunch of other kids who are smart. And I think you are who you're around, and your culture is so. I mean, your surroundings is so much to kids. And but, we talk daily, like I said, about what's going on in the world, what's going on, our school, our community, what's going on at home. And like I said, I try to do a really good job at, in our individual meetings, meeting with guys, talking about guys, how's your family? How's this? How's that? And just so I can try to dig a little deeper for them. And I think the more you do that, I think I said you really help people
Yeah. Do y'all talk about life after basketball? Because we
all
talk
the, t-
about that a lot.
all the time. All the time. That's one of my first things recruiting, I ask kids, what is your goal? What are you trying to get out of playing college sports? Of course, they all say, I want to go play pro or something. I said, no. Besides that, after you play, after basketball ends, what is your goal? What do you want to get out of playing basketball? And they're like, oh, no, I never thought about that, coach. And I said, well, that's what you need to start thinking about, because at the end of the day, basketball is eventually going to stop. So when it stops, what are you going to do next? How you gonna use your basketball, your skills, what you learn here, to be a better person, be a better husband, be a better leader, whatever it is. And so we spent a lot of time talking about that. And like I always tell our guys, we're always anything I can do to help you, I will. As long as we're friends, your friends are my friends. And so that's a huge point. And like I said, I really try to echo our guys, you know, um, man, just doing the right thing, because you never know who's watching. You never know who sees you, and you never know who they know. And I feel like a lot of times in getting jobs, you might know somebody, but they might know somebody, and it's really not. It's really not who you know. It's who knows you. And I think that gets lost because it's about who you know. No, it's who knows you. To me, that's how you do well in life. Who knows you.
I mean, you are giving some good
Yeah.
isms. Yeah, some good isms. What advice would you give young players and parents about preparing for college sports beyond just physical skills?
I think in sports, whatever it is, let's say basketball. I love guys that play multiple sports. I think guys, they're so focused on, trying to play one sport. Why? You only grow up one time. You're only in high school one time. So why not play as much as you can? Because at the end of the day, every sport, they're somewhat connected. So more, you're playing different sports, leadership skills, your athletic skills, just competitive drive, they're all tied in. So I tell kids all the time, man, focus on one, having fun, focus on two, getting better, and focus on three, man, just competing. The harder you compete and whatever you do, it's going to help you down the road, whatever it is. And, like I said, and don't be in a hurry. I think, too many times everybody's in a hurry. I got to do this, I got to do that. Why? You have to slow down. Just slow down, take a breath. Hey, know where you are, know where your feet are, man, and enjoy it. And I think everybody gets, too wrapped up on, I got to do this, I got to do that. No, just slow down. Take a breath. And, one thing we talk about all the time, our guys, man, I always say, man, talk less, talk less, talk less, talk less, and just breathe. Because then when you start really thinking about where you are, what you have, man, you become grateful. And when you're grateful, man, it changes your whole perspective on what you're doing, but also in life. So I really want my kids to really understand, man, what they have, where they're at, and who they're with.
Yeah. And then what are some mental and emotional habits that they can build early to help them succeed on the next level?
I think one, I say, being coachable is a huge thing, but playing through failure, making mistakes, and not getting you down yourself. It's okay to make mistakes, but it's not okay to quit. I think too many times, you see kids make mistakes and they say, oh, like it ain't the end of the world. You missed a shot. Deal with it, live with it. Let's go next play. So we talk a lot of time, spend a lot of time talking about next play, next play, next play, next play. Because at the end of the day, I heard this a long time ago. You know, they say, what they asked Dominique Wilkins, was that your greatest game ever? And he said, no, my greatest game is my next game. So the
Mm.
more you can think about, hey, my next game, my next play, and I think the better off you're going to be. Because the past already passed. It's already over. It already happened. You can't change it. So why not focus on what you can do next better? So like I
Yeah.
said, that's, we spend a lot of time on just that, man. Just, hey, let go, let go, let go, move on.
And Tay asked me something the other day, so I thought I'd ask you, what does being coachable look like? Because a lot of people say be coachable,
Yeah.
but what does that look like to you?
Man, coachable kids to me, kids that listen, kids that look you in the eye. Too many times, you're talking to somebody and they're kind of like not looking to you, or they immediately got a response. Hey, it's okay to have response, but listen, hear me first, and then let's talk about it. You know, and sometimes, it might be the point where no, hey, this is what I want. We're going to do this. But a lot of times, like if I say something and you like, I got you, coach. Hey, what about this? I'll say, you're right. That's a good idea. Let's do that. And I don't have all the answers. But here's the thing, nobody does. That's what makes sports great. There's a million ways to skin a cat. But, at the end of the day, we're all trying to be on the same, we're all trying to row the same way. We're all on the same ship. So we're trying to get everybody on the same page. And how can we do it fastest? So I really don't care, who has the answer right and who gets the credit. I just care about getting the job done. So we spend a lot of time talking about, just being coachable. Man, just listen. Listen more, talk less. And that's kind of that's kind of one of our phrases, man. Listen more, talk less. Listen more, talk less. And I feel like when you just shut your mouth sometimes and listen, you'd be amazed how much you actually learn.
Bija is of the year.
Yes. And then, so looking forward, what are the current goals that you have for the Northwest program this season and the seasons moving forward?
Yeah, we played really well so far. Obviously, I think we're 12-6. Obviously, we're happy where we are, but not happy about it. Same thing. I got a bunch of young kids. That they're competing really really hard. We're trying to win every game we play, just like everybody else is. That's the name of sports. We got beat last night, and obviously, we weren't happy about it. But we're trying to just find the little good, little good, little good, little good, because that's how you get better. I think if you're constantly, putting yourself down, like looking around, like man, just that didn't go the way I wanted to, and you're not getting any better. So our goals,
Lead.
I don't know. Our goals is, I want to be the best we can be. And that looks different for everybody. The best we can be might not be the same, as other schools in our league. We're trying to be the best we can be at Northwest right now.
Definitely. And so as far as like those mental traits, those emotional traits, etc. How does that contribute to y'all reaching that goal?
And like I said, I really believe it starts kind of like Ted Lasso. It starts with the word belief. If you don't believe you can do it, if you don't believe we can do it, you're never going to do it. And like I said, yeah, I think team sports, it starts at the top. I have to believe first. And once I believe, I have to make sure the other guys believe. And then I have to hold guys that standard, and I think, once you do it on a team, you get everybody buying into that. That's when you can have success. That's when you have fun too. And like I said, I'm really proud of our guys, man. They're competing so hard. And one thing you can't say about our team now. If you watch us play, our guys play hard and they compete. And that's one thing I'm really proud of. And we're gonna keep getting better. Our guys will keep working hard. And as a coach, that's a lot to be proud of.
Most definitely. And so, Coach Redman, we have reached the end here where we're going to let you talk your talk. We want you to let listeners know how they can follow you and your team. And anything else about Coach John Redman you want them to know.
Yeah, hey, I really appreciate it. I'm really active on social media. I think I call a 30-second timeout. I do it every day.
I love it.
I do it every day, and it's just a little quick sound bite of something positive, and it's real life stuff that I think about. Usually, I'm working out or something, watching tape, and I just come to my head, and I just say it. And the crazy thing about it is, I do those. I'm gonna say 95% of the time, first take, one try, and so I mean, it's really who I am and what I believe in. And so I'm all over social media. Guys, our programs all over social media, all TikTok, whatever it is, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of them. My email stuff's all online. I'm very very easy to find. Like now, if you're 6'8", can shoot it and run, I'm even easier to find.
Gotcha.
And but hey, that's that's okay. Like I said, at the end of the day, I want guys that are great people. I want people first. Because I think if you get a bunch of great people in the same room, good things are going to happen. And, I think a lot of times, coaching, people forget that, the human aspect. It's about people. And the more we can get people in line on the same page, the faster we all can have success. So that's kind of who I am as a person, who I am as a coach. I really enjoy talking tonight. And like I said, I'll leave my number, whatever it is, I'll leave that here and you can share it. No problem with that at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, most definitely. Because like you said, if there are some 6'8" guys that are watching this
want 'em.
episode,
That's
we're
right.
going to make it easy for you to get in
6'8"
contact.
with good grades,
Yeah, good
I want good
grades,
grades too.
coachable.
Coachable,
all
good
the
grades.
qualities he discussed throughout the episode, man.
That's right. I want them guys.
For sure.
Did what
I
I
want you
did.
guys.
Shut up and listen. That's what I did.
That's right.
Learn a
Just
lot.
listen. Just listen.
But man,
it's hard to listen sometimes.
you took the words out of my mouth. I was just say, man, it's hard sometimes, but like you said, when you do, that's when you really learn the most. That's when you learn that you really didn't know much at all.
No doubt.
Yeah. But man, we do appreciate you, Coach. We ain't gonna keep you too much longer. Kids, y'all listen to what he said, because the main thing that I took away from this episode, we didn't talk about stats. We didn't talk about physical qualities or attributes that much. The things that the college coaches, especially Coach Redman, is looking for is within you. It has nothing to do with those physical attributes on the outside. But again, Coach, we do appreciate you.
Appreciate you, Coach.
I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a great night.
You too, Coach. This is Hoops and Headspace, the podcast where mental health and sports intersect. I'm your host, Jada Rich.
I'm your coach, Tae.
And again, Coach, we love you, man.
Appreciate you, Coach.
Night.
Good night, Coach.